I wasn't any different than any other, junior high or high schooler. But it was very clear that the Spirit was working in my life from a point of like conviction to where I was deeply grieved when I would sin against the Lord, and it would weigh heavy on me, but not as though I needed to perform my way out of it, but just like, I can't believe I would sin against a good God like this. And so, typically what I was finding myself in situations is having a desire to not want the things of this world. Remember at a young age crying out that would not be there anymore.
Hey everybody, we're going to be interviewing Jeff Palen, and we've got it in 3 parts. The first part is who he is, his background, how he got saved. The second part is his life and ministry here at Center Church. And the third part is his plans, hopes, and dreams for planting a church in Boise, Idaho.
So if you're hearing one of the parts right now, stay tuned for the following week to hear your next part.
This is part 1. Hey everybody, this is that runaway train that is called Fixed on Jesus. My name is Rich. As always, I am your host, joined by Mark Johnson Jr. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am okay. Behind the glass is Heather Corbitt. She has no microphone, so Mark and I can pretty much do whatever we want. Actually, we have a very special Fixed on Jesus today, don't we, Mark?
That's right. We have another person in the room.
Another person.
Not our security guard.
And it's not the Holy Spirit, although he's here. It's Jeff Palen. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well. Thanks, guys.
So Jeff is actually going to be our very first interview on our Fixed on Jesus podcast.
That's right.
And Jeff's a great guy. We're thrilled to be able to have Jeff here. But one of the reasons we want to do this is just to be able to give exposure to what's coming up, Lord willing, next summer, when our church plants a church. So part of what we're looking to do is just help everybody understand why we believe this is the purpose of our church over the next year, to participate, all of us, whether we go or not, in a church plant to Boise, Idaho. So we want to be able to talk with the man who's going to be leading that church plant.
Yes. Yeah, we have several different categories we want to hop into, but specifically, one of the first ones we want to do is just ask you about your background. So when did you get saved? How did you decide? There's a lot of questions.
Slow, like okay. The background, man.
I was just going to get right into it.
Panicky here.
Oh man,
you got to kind of pull him back sometimes, Jeff. So.
I see.
Absolutely.
I see.
Background. Where are you from?
So I was born and raised in Northern California. I lived everywhere between just outside of South Lake Tahoe and the East Bay area.
Okay, and that's why you're an A's fan, correct?
Yes, at least for familial purposes.
When I say A's, do you know what that means, Mark?
Oakland Athletics?
Yeah. Do you know what sport that is? You know what sport that is?
Right.
That is baseball.
It's baseball. That's correct. Okay.
There you go.
So he is an
He
Oakland
me a lot, but he's not going to on that one.
Not on that one. Okay.
So grew up all in that area then. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So I lived there till I was just turned 20, I think, before I moved to Phoenix.
What brought you to Phoenix?
Yeah, a very good-looking young lady who I was very interested in and agreed to marry me, actually.
Okay. Were you surprised?
Well, I was hopeful.
You're hopeful.
Put it that way.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, tell us, I've heard this story before, but tell us how you guys met. So for those of you who don't know, Jeff is married to Barb.
Yep.
And so tell us how you guys met, you and Barb.
Yeah, so Barb and I both did a bridge program in Northern California at a Christian camp, Hume Lake Christian
Bridge,
camps.
what does that mean?
A bridge program is essentially set up for students that are graduating high school and know they want to go to college or the military or something like that afterwards, but they want to sort of take a year to sort of put themselves together, so to speak.
Like a gap year.
A gap year, bridge year, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, it's used different ways. So we did that. It was called the Joshua Wilderness Institute. It was, if you're familiar with Yosemite or the Sequoia National Forest and that general ballpark, it's up there. The Christian camp's been there for, I think, just a little over 100 years.
Wow.
And in the early 2000s, they started this sort of discipleship program that is meant to serve 18 to 25-year-old men and women that are just coming out of high school essentially and want to receive some kind of a biblical or theological education of some sort, but predominantly it's discipleship oriented. So there's a lot of different aspects to that, like, walking in life over a 9-month period with mentors and doing a lot of service type projects, that sort of thing. And so Barb came, her church in the Chandler area would go to summer camp. And so she became interested in the program. She went, and then I came myself coming from Northern California, and we were in the program.
So you guys jumped in to do like a gap year.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you decided, hey, I like this so much, I want to come serve here. Is that what happened?
To serve at the camp, not so much.
Okay.
Necessarily. It was more of I knew I was going to go to Bible college. I had during that program.
You did a gap year and then you left that camp forever and put it behind you, or did you go back and serve?
Yeah, I worked there a year afterwards.
Okay.
Or for not a year, I'm sorry, for the summer after the program.
Gotcha. Because I thought I remembered that. But so you meet Barb on this gap year where you're both being intentionally discipled by the leadership there at this,
exactly.
At this camp. Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Right.
Now I'm tracking.
Yep.
Excellent.
It can be confusing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. What year was that?
Oh, that's a good question. So that's going to be the year 03-04 school year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And was that a formative year for you in lots of different ways, or not just meeting Barb, but like other ways as well?
Yeah, massive ways. So take aside the fact that I met my wife there, but probably the two biggest things is the concept that I was introduced to of living my life for the glory of God was unheard of.
Brand new.
For that time.
Okay.
So it was like finding out there's a whole new side of the house.
Okay.
And so that was transformative for me. And then in the other way, which is predominantly the thrust of the program, is to teaching God's people to live effective lives for the gospel.
Excellent.
And so this idea of being effective in all that I do and for the glory of God just took over my mind and my heart from there on out. And so that was certainly formative.
And you're 18, 19 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe I turned 19 there. Yeah.
Excellent.
Can I take us back a little bit before that?
Yeah.
When were you converted? When would you say that you made the Lord your own? And based on what you told me, did you grow up in a Christian home?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I grew up in mini homes, so to speak. So that's in one way, yes, I did. My mother's, my maternal side of my family was very much looking after me. My aunt in particular loves the Lord from a young age, and my uncle loved the Lord from a young age, and they were just pulling me into their family in many ways, discipling me that way and showing me the Lord and the way that they led their home. My home, my parents, not as much, at least not until I was probably 10 or 11.
Okay.
And there's a larger story behind that for sure, but definitely what the Lord took hold of my father at one point, at least. And, he essentially, we went from never stepping foot into a church in 10 years of my life, except for a funeral, to the Lord just over a weekend, what I think was an Easter weekend, calling him. And I was now introduced to Jesus Christ, hearing about him, hearing the gospel from faithful preaching on a weekly basis.
As a 10, 11-year-old.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so right around that period of time, I remember it like it was yesterday, just the Lord, my dad looked at me and asked me, I think I'd maybe put some loose money I'd been given into the offering plate, and
Was it one of those gold ones or silver? Like,
I heard about the gold
I
ones.
can't
like a
remember.
basket?
I think it might have been the bags, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
'cause those bags, you put your hand down and it's like big and
Yeah, I don't remember. Someone will have to remind me of that. If you went to Pleasant Oak Baptist Church in the late 90s, then you can remind me what they were using at that time.
we have a legion of fans, so we'll probably,
I'm sure
we're going to
there's a
just get
listener.
bam.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to get overwhelmed.
Pleasant
But anyway,
Oak. Yeah,
go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so he just looked at me, and I think the Spirit must have just prompted him, because he asked me if I wanted at that time to do we used to do an altar call type situation at least, and went up to David Poor, who was my pastor at that time, and he very carefully and just spectacularly walked me through the gospel, and I knew it was true. I knew it was true and wanted it deeply, as much as an 11-year-old can. And so that was what started.
Were you converted? Like looking back, were you regenerated at 11?
It's like it's one of those things where you're like, okay, how much of my life is because I was a 15-year-old, you know, the mistakes you make and stuff like that, and how much of it was because there was no fruit. And there was very clearly what I would say is regeneration, because there was a lot of conviction of sin, and not necessarily a legalistic sense, but this is against the Lord.
Gotcha.
And that's
so you look back at your conversion at 11.
Yeah. I would say so. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we're with Jeff, 11-year-old Jeff.
Yeah.
Walk us through to when you feel like, oh man, the penny dropped and you started living for the Lord. Because you indicate, that there were maybe some times of drifting or backsliding.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wasn't any different than any other, junior high or high schooler. But it was very clear that the Spirit was working in my life from a point of like conviction, to where I was deeply grieved when I was sitting against the Lord, and it would weigh heavy on me, but not as though I needed to perform my way out of it, but just like, I can't believe I would sin against a good God like this. And so, typically what I was finding myself in situations is having a desire to not want the things of this world, knowing they're bad, knowing that I shouldn't want them, but knowing that there was still this.
It was still a tug at you.
Exactly. Yeah. And so just really would remember at a young age crying out that would not be there anymore.
And you're going to church all this time.
Yeah, predominantly. So until I was about, so maybe 5 years after being, saved, then my family went through some ruckus, and there was just not some consistencies. There was a lot of inconsistencies in my own father's life that led to essentially the separation of him and my stepmother. And then just because of some faithful people in my life that God had put there, I can't remember, back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, there used to be this like weird, I don't even know if it's like a lot of people know about it, but Teen Mania, Ron Luce, and all of that.
Was that Acquire the Fire?
Acquire the Fire. So like we would do that. Like I was.
Hold on. I love I always push pause button when it comes to like Christian niche culture, because Mark has no idea.
No clue.
Yeah.
He went to his very first youth meeting recently.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "How was that?" And he goes, I don't know. I've never been to a youth meeting."
Yeah.
And we went to the youth camp. We went to a youth camp that you led really well. And I was like, "What'd you think?" And he goes, "I don't know. I've never been to a youth camp." So like, Acquire the Fire. Maybe give us 30 seconds on that.
That's good marketing. I'll start with that.
It is. I mean, it worked.
Classic 90s,
It was helpful, but maybe not so much in other ways. But so Acquire the Fire essentially would go to major markets, and they would take over a stadium or a coliseum or something like that. And they would host like a 2 or 3 day, like a long weekend, maybe conference.
Yeah.
And it was what it was really good for was introducing students to very good Christian music for the day.
Right.
Because for
the day. Right. Yeah.
Not good anymore, but
well, it depends. Like,
some
of us,
for a lot of people, we're singing Kumbaya or like It Only Takes a Spark or some like super old lame songs, and then you show up at this thing, it's lasers, it's lights, it's
like contemporary,
highly produced.
It's you got electric guitar, and you're like, whoa, I can sing to that.
Okay.
And then there would be often a series of what would be now we would call sermons or messages that were aimed at telling the youth and their leaders to chase after Jesus, reject the world, go after Christ, and essentially own your part in spreading the gospel. At least that's how it landed on me. I think, if you look back, there's always things that
sure.
Probably
but like
good,
the other thing was like it was pushing on all the kids' emotions too. So it was a very emotional time as well. So like which is don't Google it, Mark.
I'm Googling it.
Which is very, it's kind of part and parcel to kind of the 80s and 90s, back in the day.
Yes.
Oh, there's a whole Reddit forum on it. We'll get into that another time.
Don't do that. Anyway.
Anyway.
So you're at Acquire the Fire, that kind of thing, right?
That kind of thing. And so essentially just, it was actually out of that I sensed the Spirit was doing something pretty significant that was different than I had experienced before. And what I thought that was that the Lord was calling me to preach the word at that time. And so I didn't, as a 16-year-old, you don't really know what that means. You just sort of have ideas. And because you're in a very highly emotional environment, you think that means you need to be like
right then and there,
everybody has seen impassioned people do that sort of thing
Yeah.
in odd contexts. And so
Right.
I was very blessed. I went home and had a pastor that was able to walk me through that very helpfully. But
What's his name?
David-
He's with the Lord
David
now,
Poor,
right?
Yeah, he passed away a few years ago. Just very formative individual in my life.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, would want to just honor him in any way I could. Just,
And he was like a logger who went to seminary and like put himself, right?
yes,
Yeah.
He that's a great story. But very quickly, essentially, was trained in the woods. Was a very talented, well-known feller. And
Whoa! You got to define that.
Yeah.
I'm from the city.
He's from the city.
yeah, so that's an individual that essentially cuts down trees. And so there's
Lumberjack.
No, we don't say that.
Oh.
Mark. That's offensive.
Yeah,
Is it?
in
Oh, I'm
those
so sorry. I didn't know.
circles-
Mark, you're going to be canceled by all the fellers.
No.
The fellers are like, they're coming with pitchforks and torches for Mark Johnson Jr.
Well, I get him a lumberjack
Friends-
breakfast. We'll call
No,
it good.
no. This is, we're not,
Is that a derogatory word? Are you being serious?
of course. I don't joke
Lumberjack?
around. Don't say lumberjack.
No, I thought it was just like the word. I don't
That's
know.
right. Yeah, I mean,
He's
Is
having-
it? Am I
he's having
offending you,
fun with
Jeff?
You. No, I think
Okay.
he's just having fun with you. But you should
Okay,
keep
good.
on giving him.
You could have convinced me.
So David essentially moved his family from Northern California to what I think is Fort Worth, where Southwestern Seminary is, which is one of the schools for the Southern Baptists, and put himself through a program there, and then came back. And what I found out many years later, almost 30 years later, he planted a number of churches in the El Dorado County area, which is a part of where South Lake Tahoe and some of the surrounding areas. And so, just very formative, deep desire to shepherd men and women and help them, and high regard for the word.
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So the penny drops, you decide, hey, you know what? I feel like I want to be a vessel for the Lord and possibly in preaching and teaching.
Yeah.
You're 16. Now, one thing I do need to ask all of our listeners are asking this question in their minds, and so I need to ask it as well.
Yes.
How old were you when you could pull a beard off like that? I mean, because you've got a world-class beard. I mean, like 12?
That's a good question. I was, my parents insisted I start shaving when I was a freshman because they thought it was inappropriate that I would
In high school. In
they
high
thought
school.
It was inappropriate that I would have.
We'll make sure to get a
goatee
picture of
or
that
a beard
beard.
at that time.
In high school. So you could rock that in high school if they would have let you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So the way there was like,
Wow.
like every 15-year-old, you find a way to push the limits. So I think what I did is I would let my sideburns grow down.
Yeah.
And then by my end of my sophomore year, I had like what do you call like
Chops?
a goatee?
Chin strap or
Yeah.
chin.
If you guys remember Fred Durst,
Yeah.
like my friends always said I looked
have
just
no
like
idea
Fred
who that
Durst.
Yeah, you don't want to know
at least
about
at that
Fred
period.
Durst. Well, another
yeah.
time.
Okay.
You know, we're talking about his facial hair, not his
Yes.
music or conduct of his
Right.
life, but
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, that's good to know. Like, okay, so yeah, Jeff's been.
So yeah, that was like early high school through the end of it. Facial hair was a part of my life for sure.
Okay.
So you've been a grown man for a long time.
Long time, yeah.
In some ways,
that's good. Okay.
Real
Depending on
grown.
how one
All right.
measures that.
I could see how people would think maybe you should preach if you can rock a beard like that at 16. I don't know.
Definitely an advantage.
Exactly.
for sure it's helpful.
Okay, so you get this sense, you keep going through high school. I'm sure your pastor, Pastor Poor, is pouring into your life.
Yep.
And you are then deciding, okay, I'm going to maybe take a year to go to this discipleship, set aside some time and focus on
exactly.
that. And that's where we got there. And you meet Barb.
Yeah,
Barb.
we meet Barb, and it's I applied and got into a couple of different undergrad programs, Bible programs, and so decided that Barb and I didn't know we were going to be dating. Essentially, after the program, we went on a really great date that ended up having a very.
Wait, it
good
took 9
conversation.
months to go on a date with her?
Yeah.
Took it real
one
slow.
One of the guardrails in the program is that they ask that you would not enter into any relationships, so that you're not sort of
How many
distracted.
days after it was over did you enter into a
One.
relationship?
Probably a couple of weeks.
A couple weeks.
Wow.
Okay.
You're classy.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
good.
well, it wasn't that everybody didn't know that we had eyes for each other.
Sure.
They all knew we were interested, but
Yeah.
we definitely tried to do it at least cautiously.
Sure. All right. So you and Barb become an item,
Yeah.
and Barb comes back home. Yes.
Yeah. Originally the plan is that she was gonna. We knew we were working towards marriage. That was the start of the relationship. That was the direction we were going. she's going to come back here. And the plan was that she was going to move to Sacramento. I was going to finish my Bible program, and then, we were going to serve a church.
When you say a Bible program, you mean an undergrad at a Bible college?
Yeah. So I started at what used to be called San Jose Christian College, which is now for nearly 20 years been William Jessup University. They relocated from San Jose to Rockland, which is a suburb of Sacramento.
Gotcha.
And so went there, was in it for a year, and I tease Barb now because it's, enough time has passed. But I think for the last semester, every single day, she asked me when we were going to get engaged.
Oh, wow.
She was on it.
And so
And this is before cell phones.
This is no cell phones are around.
Oh, they are.
But this
Okay.
definitely
No
before
text.
smartphones.
No texting.
Yeah, no, I couldn't handle the T9 or any of that stuff. So these fingers, come on.
But you guys are, so you're talking every day, and she's like, when are we going to get engaged?
When are we going to get married? And so
You guys are like 19, 20?
yeah, we were definitely not 20. We were 19. So she might have just turned 20. So
Okay, gotcha.
yep. So I ended up moving out here. We determined that that at the time California is blowing up from a residential housing perspective,
Right.
and it's just unbelievably difficult even 20 plus years ago to think about living there. And so for us, it was not doing that so much here in the Phoenix Metro. And so I just said, oh, okay, I guess I'll just go there. And that was the end of it. And so I found myself here.
And tell us what you did, because you didn't go right back to school.
Yeah.
You got a job with...
Yeah. So I got a job with the cable company here in Phoenix, and essentially just with almost no experience professionally, started there, essentially got into doing installation and service of cable services. And that grew into what became nearly a 15-year career just with that one company, all the while being able to do a number of things like get my education.
Well, let's hold on. You're skipping ahead here. All right. So you get this job. You guys get married here. Yes?
Yep. Got married in Chandler. Yeah.
And what year?
2005.
2005. You get married in Chandler.
Yep.
You're working for the cable company. You're plugging away, providing for your family, and kids come along. How many kids do you have now, and what's their ages?
Yeah, so we have 4 kids. Hannah, who is our oldest, she is going to turn 16 next month. She just an amazing young lady.
She's smart,
recently just professed faith in Christ, and looking forward to seeing her baptized. So
which is coming up.
Proud of her.
Yeah.
And then 2 or 3 years later, we have Mackenzie Jane. Mackenzie is our second oldest daughter. And then much sooner after that, we have Benjamin, who's born to us a surprise.
Oh, okay.
And then even a bigger surprise, just barely 12 months later, we have our 4th and final child, at least to our knowledge, Ava Marie. So
excellent. So you got 3 girls and a boy.
3 girls and a boy.
Busy household.
Yeah.
And kids start coming pretty quick after you get married, yes?
They don't.
Oh, they don't?
Yeah.
I guess my math is off.
Yeah, no. So we got married in 05 and Hannah's in 08.
Okay, so you get 3 years.
Yep. So
And in that time frame, you're working.
Going to school.
When do you start? Because you don't have your undergrad. When do you start going to school?
Yeah. So I actually, when I moved here, I had made a commitment to my grandparents and to my family because I was so young. They wanted to make sure that I had finished my education.
Sure.
So I continued to go at the Chandler Gilbert and, Mesa and all of the junior college program here, and chipped away at it slowly. So I pretty much had been in school trying to get done for the first couple of years I had lived here, but then I took a pretty good break when we had the kids.
The kids come, you take a break.
Yeah.
Right. And so then you go back. Do you remember what year you go back in earnest to try to get that undergrad? Because one of the things we've talked about in the past is like that desire to preach and teach that you feel at 16 is something that's still there for you as you're working at the cable company, but you don't have an undergraduate degree.
Yep.
You want to go through seminary. You know you need that undergrad before you jump into seminary.
Yep.
And so, like, when do you start that undergrad again?
Yeah, so that's going to be somewhere I can't remember the year off the top of my head, but that's somewhere between Mackenzie and Ben.
And how old is Ben and how old is Mackenzie?
Ben just turned 11, so that's something like 12 years ago probably.
Okay, so we're looking at 2012.
Yep, roughly.
And you go back, and so what? So walk us through when you go back in earnest. What did a day look like for Jeff Palen when you to try to juggle
Fatherhood,
yeah
school,
right working
work,
Yeah.
wife.
like what was a day like walk us through the times of a day back then.
Yeah, so typically then I would start work somewhere around 7, and I was in service at the time. So basically what that meant was I had to try to find, we worked 410s. So usually that meant you worked Wednesday through Saturday or Sunday through Wednesday or some variation of that. So what I did is I had to actually, to get my schedule to work, because most of junior college schedules set up like on a Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday.
And you had to go in. There was no online back then.
Right. Yeah. In fact, I think it took a couple of years before I even had availability for an online class.
So you're going to class every day.
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
every time to take a class, right?
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. So I had to find the classes I needed on a schedule that I could work around. And that meant I had to actually resign from my position and find a way to transfer over into essentially what was a demotion. And the Lord provided a way for that. That was a huge act, by the way. Good story to talk about another time. But essentially, I had to change roles within the company and then start working on a program that was like on a Monday, Wednesday, if I remember right. And so I would get up early, go to work, and then I would do like something like a 10 or 11 hour day. And then if I had to, usually try to get some homework in or whatever, reading assignments, that sort of thing at the end of the day, take care of family, do that sort of stuff. Barb did most of the heavy lifting, if we're all honest with each other.
Sure, right, exactly.
And then when my day off would be like on, say, Wednesday or Monday or something like that, then I'm essentially going to class for at least a good chunk of the day and then trying to utilize the rest of the time to do assignments.
Yeah.
And, probably like mow the lawn, that sort of thing.
Yeah, right. Every day for a long time is both work, school, family responsibilities.
Yeah, it would end up
hours
being
and
about
hours.
10 years. Yeah,
And you're probably plugged into a local church too.
it was. Yeah.
So where do you finally get your undergraduate degree from?
Yeah, so I got a bachelor's of science in business administration from Arizona Christian University, which used to be Southwestern College. They've been in the Phoenix metro, I think, for something like 60 years or something. So,
All right. And you get that, and do you remember what that was?
oh man, you're pushing it.
Yeah.
That had to have been around 15, 16, somewhere in there.
Okay. And then so from that you realize, okay, because again, you grew up Baptist,
Yeah,
right? You grew up
Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist.
Yep.
And the only model to get into pastoral ministry for the Southern Baptist is seminary.
Generally, yeah.
Undergrad, seminary.
Some kind of education.
Right.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot to be said for that. So you go, okay, I'm done with my undergraduate degree. You take a breath, and then what do you do after that?
Yeah, I was the weird guy in my undergrad program. When everybody went around the class and talked about why they're in the program, I just said, this is the only thing that I can do to get me into seminary for the cheapest amount of money.
Business admin for the win.
So essentially, I had my eye on Phoenix Seminary from the get-go. And
Okay.
made that clear when I started.
All right. And then so you start a seminary program,
Yep.
continuing to work,
Yep.
continuing to plug away, continuing with your family responsibilities. And that's a 7-8 year journey.
Yeah, and we're having kids
Yeah.
through that, which was incredible.
Right.
So yeah, that's the context. Is essentially we're doing all that, and Barb is finding herself pregnant at least 3 times in that or twice in that situation.
In the seminary years.
Yeah, undergrad and seminary, together.
Okay. And so talk about Phoenix Seminary. What was that experience like?
Man, Phoenix Seminary. Oh man, just so grateful.
Yeah.
Rich, when we went there, it was in a transition period.
Right.
So Phoenix Seminary started initially as a satellite campus for Western Seminary.
Where's that? Tell everybody where
That's
that
in basically, I believe it's outside of Portland,
Yeah.
Oregon.
Yeah.
So, and it in Western, and I think Phoenix at the time was essentially very closely linked to the dispensational theological
Yep.
trend that was, essentially replicating what was happening in Dallas
Uh-huh.
and other places. And so Phoenix essentially started to transition out of that. And there was a number of catalysts for that change. But I'm so grateful because I think because of that change, as well as the work of the Gospel Coalition in Phoenix, I was very confident I was moving into a program at Phoenix that was going to be very edifying and helpful.
Yeah, there was a time, many people may not know this, but there was a time that Phoenix Seminary had a really influential professor who taught a free grace who taught free grace, which essentially, I won't bore you with everything, but essentially free grace is that teaching that says that if you make a decision for Christ, the fruit that, even if there's no fruit, you're a Christian, essentially. And so that
All
was
about confession.
It's all about confession. It's all about
Faith.
Yeah, faith and confession. And fruit is not just secondary, but it's something that's not even really worried about.
Yeah, they would unlink those together.
Yeah, they would. And so it had a massive impact. I mean, he taught for 20, 25 years here, something like that.
Yeah.
A massive impact on a lot of the churches and pastors in the area. And so one of the reasons that I wasn't a fan was because of that. Then that starts to shift right around the time you go there, correct?
Yeah, probably, it probably started with Dr. Grudem joining the faculty in 2001, which was well before me, of course.
Right.
But then they bring on John Meade,
Right.
who is like the Hulk
He's
in regards to all things
Old Testament.
seminary.
All things seminary, really. I mean, John's a great guy. He's an Old Testament expert, a Job expert, right?
Yeah.
But
An
man,
expert of everything.
he kind of is.
Like he doesn't do anything sort of without an expert's mind.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's a scholar's scholar.
Yep. And then probably right, I think it was a year or semester right before I started, Brian Arnold joins.
Excellent.
And to me, that was like, oh man, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
And I heard him at a Gospel Coalition conference.
Yep.
And
Brian was a historical theology guy.
Yep.
From Southern. So Brian and John start bringing some real solid strength theologically.
Yeah. And it's not to say that there wasn't that there already.
No, but there's more heavy lifting with those
But
two
those
guys.
guys definitely, it seems like they raised the bar in regards to what people knew could potentially come from the school.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
What was your favorite class at Phoenix Seminary? You might get this one a lot. There's probably a lot of good ones
Yeah.
based on the lineup you just described.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. Two come to mind. I always tell everybody the preaching courses with Chuck Newkirk, just make me want to do it all over again.
Is that the Church on Mill?
Yeah, Chuck's the pastor of the Church on Mill, but he's also a PhD. So he teaches preaching, homiletics there at Phoenix. And
just there, that guy has the ability to just fan into flame gifting and without a lot of the shortfalls.
Yeah.
And so it's just super grateful for him. So definitely would take him in a heartbeat again. And then in the last semester at school, this young man, well, he's probably older than I am, joined the faculty, who blowing a lot of our minds, I think, right now, and just the way that he publishes and what he's putting out there. But Steve Doobie had a class, which was a Socratic approach to systematic theology, which is essentially the class that they put in there to help everybody get ready for the oral exam.
Yeah.
Oral exit exam. And that was pretty darn formative for me. And so.
Yeah, Doobie's class is great. Doobie's a great guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those would be the two that I would.
Okay. Yeah, those
say
are great.
were Great. So.
Did you have a class with Dr. Wayne Grudem or multiple?
Took a couple with him. I had one online and I did one in person, and that as well was very formative.
Honorable
for
mention.
Different reasons. Yeah. Honorable mention. Yeah. I mean, it's
kind of
one's,
the Godfather.
assumed, and everybody knows that. So it's like, it's funny. But the one thing I was impressed about Dr. Grudem is that man is a relationship builder, because I mean, we had a classroom that was full of people that probably came to Phoenix Seminary because of that class. They would move across the country to go to that school to study with Dr. Grudem. But in the back, every time I had something with him, there would be a row of people that he would just meet out and about, whether at church or whatnot. And I think we had a Supreme Court judge, we had several instructors from Arizona State, and a few others that he would just meet and say, "Come take my class. I want you to come."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so that was like just sort of really thinking about like ministry and a life of ministry that is beyond.
Yeah, Dr. Grudem is he's humble, he's kind.
Yeah.
He's the only professor that I ever experienced who would sing a hymn at the beginning of every class.
I don't think anybody does that.
Nobody does that, but he would. So like he'd have the whole class sing
That's great.
A Mighty Fortress or whatever. He put the words up and everybody sings it, And so like one of the things he did so well was make sure everybody understood that theology and worship or doxology. They go together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like the whole context, the whole culture of Phoenix Seminary was helpful.
Oh yeah, from start to finish. I mean, you think about it and you go like, because different profs come and go, and you really wonder like, man, did I miss out? Or I wish I would have gone at this time, or it would have been cool if I had had more time with this person. But you realize that in the sovereignty of God, He wants you to go through what you go through.
Yeah, right.
And He's going to use that. And so that I have to agree wholeheartedly that Phoenix Seminary, when I was there, was exactly what I needed at that
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Awesome.
Now, in the time frame you're going to Phoenix Seminary, you discover a church on Cooper Road between Baseline and
its name at this
Guadalupe.
time?
Yeah, just before Phoenix, actually.
I don't recall Mark Johnson Jr. And so,
It had this really weird name that was hard to spell.
yeah,
People of Destiny?
nope.
Oh.
Sovereign Grace.
Yep.
It's I before E, except after C, and in Sovereign. And so we had that here. So talk to us, like, when did you come to this church, and what were your thoughts when you got here?
Yeah, we came in October of man, now that I think about this, it's gonna be hard to remember. Right before starting seminary, so it had to have been like 2015 October. And I remember the first time we came, sitting in the, I always want to say the pews because I did grow up Baptist.
Yeah, there's no pews
But
in there.
there's never been pews here to my knowledge.
No, there's never been.
Sitting in one of the rows in the back and just being overwhelmed with sort of shock and awe, if you will, that the way that the Lord was made to be glorious in our eyes in every way in the service. So in the singing, in the preaching, in all the liturgy, and it was overwhelming.
Why? Because, like, if people have been coming here for a while, I remember you talking about this, and this is all they know. What for you was different?
This actually seems like the perfect place to take a break. When we come back next week, we're going to learn a lot more about how Jeff and Barb came to Sovereign Grace, what Jeff has been doing here at Center Church, and looking forward to that church plant in Star, Idaho. If you'd like to learn more about the Fixed on Jesus podcast, you have questions for us, or if you just want to send us a, hey, you guys are doing a great job, go ahead and send us an email at production@centergilbert.com. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you next time.